Welcome to Jewish Political Watch. I'm Deborah Jacobi, and I'm here to help you understand the impact politicians have on the lives of Jews throughout the world. I'm very happy to have with us here today the highly respected political, foreign, and defense commentator in British and Israeli politics, James Jeremy Marlowe, who is affiliated with GB News and Talk TV, as well as other TV channels. And he was previously with ITN News, CNN, Reuters, LBC Radio, and was an advisor and an analyst to several members of the Knesset and to Al Jazeera. So welcome, James. It's really good to have you here.
Thank you. And just to correct on that point, I wasn't an advisor to Al Jazeera. I was just somebody who was doing some commentating work from the Knesset as an Israel political analyst.
Yes. So now we have this election that just took place. We call these elections midterms in the States. In America, they're local elections. And there were quite a few surprises. Farage, as we know, did incredibly well. And I wondered if that was a result partially of all the demonstrations that went on in the West End, that many people, I think, in London felt that they wanted their country back, and they may have seen Nigel Farage as the one to give their country back to them. I think they were very fed up with the constant rant, not just against Israel, but a lot of those people tend to be anti-Britain, and not very nationalistic, even though they may be some college students. But we have a similar process in America where there's a lot of anti-American rhetoric. And I think the people were really feeling that in London. Do you think that that had an impact on how many people voted for Farage, which was somehow connected to his immigration policies?
It depends what you speak about in the country. So Nigel Farage's party, Reform UK, did very well in the northeast of England. Sunderland is one particular place they did very well. Gateshead, which is actually where the very famous yeshiva is based, or many yeshivot and seminaries for the girls as well. I'm not sure how many of them voted, but nevertheless, the Reform UK did very, very well over there. But elsewhere in the country, the Greens did very, very well. Up until now, it's been a two-party system, Conservatives, also known as Tories, and the Labour Party. They've been around for about 125 years. The Conservatives have been around longer. But at the same time, we've now been introduced to two new kids on the block, which is, of course, Reform UK and the Greens. Liberal Democrats were always there. So it depends where you talk about. Generally, Reform picked up more seats across the country than any other party. If I just look down, just to double check how many seats they picked up, which is, I think it's on this bit of paper. Yes, 1,453 seats.
Wow.
And that's an increase of 1,451. So they pretty much came from nowhere because it's a brand new party. And also the Greens picked up 587, so considerably less. But I have to tell you, in the area of London, specifically in the London borough of Barnet, which perhaps has more Jewish people within Barnet than any other country, any other county, rather, any other council across the country. The Reform Party didn't take any seats whatsoever, despite the fact that they had a presence here in this area and they worked very, very hard and they were promised votes. They didn't get enough votes. And Barnet Council, as it's known, actually went from Labour 4 years ago. In other words, Labour Party took it from the Conservatives to what's known as no overall control.
I'm speaking to some Jews who told me that they did not want to vote for Farage because they weren't sure where he stood on the Jewish question. And so some of those I know voted for Conservative. Is that a possibility that that's what occurred in Barnet? It's hard to know. It's hard to know, right?
Well, it's not hard to know. It's an interesting question because we have discussed this as well. I mean, I can tell you, as somebody who knows Nigel Farage from GB News and also from the EU Parliament as well, he's really stuck his neck out for the Jewish community and as a supporter for Israel. And in some cases, when he didn't need to do that, it may have been unpopular because he's also taking Labour Party voters away from the Labour Party itself. Some Labour Party voters are going to the more extreme Green Party, but they definitely can't go to the Conservatives. You're either Labour or you're Conservative. So it's very rare that somebody will switch from one to the other. So believe it or not, the centre to left party or the more socialist within the Labour Party are actually giving their votes to Reform on the centre to right. And that's how, I mean, the northeast of England, places like Sunderland and Newcastle and Gateshead and all of these places over here, this is hardline Labour territory. They've controlled this for decades and decades and decades. Right. And they did take a chance with Boris Johnson because they voted to Brexit. They voted to leave the EU, and they felt that the Labour Party weren't backing them up. So they left the Labour Party to put their vote with Boris Johnson. He didn't deliver, and now they're putting it with the Reform Party. So you've got a bit of a mismatch across the country. As far as the answer to your question goes, in the religious area of Golders Green and Hendon, there were religious candidates, of course, standing for the Conservative Party, and some of the rabbis came out and told them, you should vote for a religious candidate, and those are standing with the Conservatives, so go out and vote for the Conservatives. The Conservatives did very, very well. I was at the council on Friday. I left at 6:35 or something, because it was getting a bit late for me on Friday, but nevertheless, many of the wards had been called, and I have to say I was very surprised at the amount of votes that each Conservative candidate got. And they did very, very well. They didn't take the council because they were expected to take the council, but nevertheless, they took back many seats from the Labour Party. And as I said, Reform didn't do very well. So Jewish people I know voted for Reform, but it wasn't enough because they were told, vote for the Conservatives. And the other problem is that local people wanted to get out the Labour candidates. They wanted to give the Labour a bit of a punch on the nose. And they were scared. And really, you have to know the wards to know where it was a two-horse race between Reform and Conservative, and where it was a two-horse race between Conservative and Labour. So they were told, if you vote for Reform, that means you're taking the vote away from Conservative, and that will allow Labour to come in, which is what happened in an area called West Hendon, where the 3 Labour candidates did win. And I was surprised about that because I thought the 2 Reform candidates had a very good chance. And it turned out, if my memory serves me correctly, it was about 850 votes that the Conservative guy got, 850 votes that the Reform guy got, and the Labour person got 1,600. So in other words, the split vote in West Hendon caused Labour to come in.
Right.
So that is one of the reasons why Jewish people did, in the end, go back to the Conservatives. I do think that if this was a general election, the voting might have been different. But nevertheless, this was the first time that the Reform people in the area in Barnet were building up. They've got a very big team. And next comes up the London mayor election in less than 2 years. So they've built up a big database, and they know how to campaign to get the vote for the Labour candidates, for the Reform candidates for the London mayor election.
Right. So it's very interesting because they have really 3 years before the next government has a general election, which is a long time to wait considering how many people voted for Reform. I mean, I understand at a local level, but a local level is very different than a prime minister and a general election. So do you see any possibility of there being a premature general election? Is that a possibility with this kind of a vote?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, it's nothing to do with the vote. It's actually to do with the government itself. I mean, when David Cameron came into power in 2010, he did not have an overall majority with his Conservative Party. So he did a deal with Nick Clegg, who was leading the Liberal Democrat Party. And they passed a law to say that no government can actually call a general election before the 5-year term. In other words, do the full 5 years and then call the general election. The reason why we went in to an entire, I think it was like 5 general elections within a few years, it was like Israel back in 2019, is simply because they decided, the government at the time, which was the Conservatives, decided to change that law. With the majority that they had, they therefore changed the legislation in order to cause a general election, which, as I said, is why we had many general elections. So is the Labour Party likely to call a general election before it's actually just under 3 years? That's the maximum time to go now because they've been in power for 2 years. It really depends on what happens in the coming days, weeks and months. Right now, because Labour seats were wiped out across the country, almost 2,000 of them, a lot of Labour councillors are very, very angry because when they went knocking on the doors, they were hearing the same thing. And they've said this throughout the media this morning, Sunday morning, and over the weekend. They kept hearing the same thing, despite the fact that this is local election responsible for cleaning the rubbish and cutting down the trees and potholes and things like that. They kept hearing the national concern. We don't like Keir Starmer. We think he's useless. We think he's done too many U-turns. We think he's done terrible things. He is useless. He is no good. Get rid of him. We can't vote for him. We're going to vote for the Greens. We're going to vote for Reform, or we're not going to vote at all, is what they said on the doorstep. And almost 2,000 of them got wiped out. And some of them have been councillors for decades. And they're furious. Councillors being,
Right.
they held the seats. They're furious. So now what's taking place is that there are backbenchers in the House of Commons who are saying that now it's time to call for a leadership challenge. The problem with that is that even if you just change the face in the front of the Labour Party, in other words, change the Prime Minister, well, you've still got the same
Policies are the
policies
same.
behind you.
Right. Exactly.
And I don't think people are going to buy it. So what I would suggest is, and I'm not an advisor for the Labour Party. I'm not even a voter for the Labour Party, I will say. But nevertheless, what people seem to be saying, and Michael Gove, who is a good friend of the Jewish people and of Israel, and was a former senior member of the cabinet under the Tories, under successive governments, and also ran as leader of the party but lost. Michael Gove has also been saying, from my experience, because now when you're out of government, you don't really have ties either side. You're still a member of the Conservative Party, of course, but you can give your honest opinion based on experience. And Michael Gove is saying this, that I think that, I'm quoting him, of course, I think that if you run to change your leader very, very quickly, you run into the same problems that we did. And the Conservative Party had 5 different leaders over 14 years. And that didn't change anything, because when it came to the general election, they were wiped out. They lost more seats than any other time in history. That's the Conservatives. And the same thing could happen to Labour. But at the same time, you've also got a backbench MP. Her name is Catherine West. She's been on the media rounds this morning here in the
Yes,
UK.
I saw her. Yes.
And Catherine is saying that if the cabinet do not make a decision to put a candidate forward to challenge Keir Starmer, then I will be that person to do it. Now, she's not going to win because anyone who actually casts the knife right at the beginning is always outcasted and always just blamed for bringing problems. But if you look back on the Labour Party the last 2 years, it really has been a disastrous reign. And they have such a huge majority because people turned against the Conservatives. The Reform Party candidates were running up and down the country 2 years ago. They split the vote between Conservative and Reform. And that's why the Labour Party candidate who became MP got in. But what the Tories did in 14 years caused a lot of problems, and we have thousands of illegal immigrants coming in every single month. Now it's getting worse every single month. And as we head towards the summertime, it's definitely going to increase. A lot of these, 90% of these, are young men, not women. So that's proving that it's probably unlikely that they're coming from war-torn areas. According to the Human Rights Council, which Britain and France and many countries are a member of, once that little dinghy leaves the shore and it goes into the water, there's nothing that the French can do about it. Now, the English was saying, well, look, we paid you this money, you should be stopping the boats. The French are saying, well, what do you want us to do? And it was a case actually recently whereby there was a French policeman who took a knife just when it was in the shallow water and actually hit with the knife the little dinghy, the plastic dinghy, to puncture it.
Yeah.
And he was actually I'm not sure if he was arrested, but certainly there was a big campaign. He was taken off duty because this is something that you can't do, even though it was in shallow water. And once the boats start to come out, when the British Navy are in the English Channel, they can't turn them back. Again, it's against the rights of the Human Rights Organization. So what the Conservatives now say is that they will come out of this Human Rights Organization, so they won't have this problem. The Reform Party have always said that. But at the same time, you have to come out of also other organizations, other human rights organizations, in order for it to work. So you can send these people right back or put them in a third country like Rwanda, which was also on the cards. But Rishi Sunak, the former Prime Minister of the Conservative Party, he didn't want to come out the Human Rights Organization, but he still wanted to send them to Rwanda. And once you put them on the plane for Rwanda, before the plane took off, what was happening was you had human rights lawyers in the UK who were saying, hang on a second, you can't do that. We've got an injunction, and you take them off. So it's just like, it's all got out of control.
Yeah.
The other problem with the Labour Party, and I think it's important to say this, I believe it's now 15 U-turns. So in other words, the Labour Party have come into power. They've said that they would do a whole load of things, and it's been very, very unpopular. The first thing was that they were big friends of the pensioners, the old elderly people who have now stopped working.
And then they stopped their electricity, right?
No, they didn't stop the electricity, but what they did was that there was a winter fuel allowance.
Right.
So in other words, those poor people who wouldn't be able to pay a huge amount of money for electricity, and Britain is one of the most expensive countries in the world for electricity, the way that the system has been set up, and it's just been disaster, absolute disaster, which the Reform always talk about how they will sort it out. So they've got great ideas. It's because Boris Johnson wanted to become green and invest in green energy, and all the prices were going up to fund this, and it was just, again, this is why a lot of people lose a lot of confidence with politicians. So here comes the Labour Party, who actually saying, no, we're going to take away this winter fuel allowance. Now, they did a U-turn at the end because it was so unpopular with their backbenchers.
Right.
But also the same thing, they said that they promised that they would actually give pensions to older women, the WASPy women they were called, when their pension age went up. And they claimed that they were unaware of it. They didn't know about it, but really they did know about it because there was a massive big ad campaign. And they were prepared to stop work. I think it was at 60 or 63. And then they were told they had to work for another 2 or 3 years. And they didn't like that. And they wanted the money back. So the Labour Party said, we will give you the money back. But then it came down to it. They said, we can't do that. And another 12 or 13 different things whereby they did the U-turn. They were big friends with the farmers. And and a lot of the farmers voted for the Labour Party. And then the Labour Party said, you know what, we're going to tax you 3 times as much as everyone else. And certainly if you sell your land, a lot of it is coming to us. And the farmers just said, what's not fair? What are you talking about? You'll put us out of business. You can't do that. They ended up doing a U-turn on that. So you see that a government just has no direction. It has no objective, no purpose. It just doesn't think about what it's doing. And you would think that in 14 years that they were waiting to get into power, 14 years they were in opposition, they would have a few plans. And it seems as if they had no plan whatsoever. That's the problem.
Right, I hear you. Some problem.